Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Premier David Eby will outline legislation to fight the U.S. tariffs coming up at 12:15. We'll bring that to you live as soon as it begins. First, though, is Donald Trump after BC's water? That question's been hanging over the trade war. Now the U.S. has paused negotiations on an important cross-border treaty, and concerns are even more heightened. We'll talk to an expert on the Columbia River Water Treaty. Later this hour, ramping up to the Junos, we'll talk CanCon. Who are your favorite Canadian artists? I'm Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. BC Energy Minister Adrian Dix says the U.S. has paused negotiations with Canada on the Columbia River Water Treaty. The 6-decade-long treaty regulates the two countries' use of the Columbia River that spans BC, Washington, and Oregon and flows into the Pacific Ocean. So it's things like power generation and water sharing. There is an interim agreement in place, but Donald Trump has listed that deal as one of his grievances against Canada. And amid the escalating tariff war and Trump's previous suggestions that Canada has, quote, a very large faucet the U.S. could access, Adrian Dix says BC needs to prepare.
Renegotiating the Columbia River Treaty. We have been for the last 7 years with the first Trump administration, Biden administration, and now this Trump administration. And those discussions are paused. The treaty itself continues to be enforced. It has a 10-year cancellation clause. So people sometimes ask me in the grocery store, can't we just cancel that thing in retaliation? Well, it's a 10-year cancellation clause. There'll be a number of U.S. elections between now and then, so it wouldn't be very effective. But that's a big part of it as well. And we've heard, of course, because the President of the United States has put in question our border treaty, which is more than 100 years old, that we've heard his statements about Canadian water and other things, which leads to concern. And so we have an agreement in principle on the Columbia River Treaty, but the discussions to turn that into a treaty are paused right now. And obviously, there's always concern with what this administration is doing.
Now, Dix says BC has a contingency plan depending on what action the U.S. takes. For more on this, I'm joined by Tricia Stadnyk, an engineering professor and Canada Research Chair in Hydrologic Modelling at the University of Calgary. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us. Just how important is the Columbia River Treaty?
The Columbia River Treaty is one of 13 treaties that span the Canada-U.S. border and are covered under our Boundary Waters Treaty Act that has been in place since 1908. And it's extremely important. In particular, the Columbia River Treaty is important because it deals with a lot of freshwater supply that is changing quite drastically with climate change as a result of originating at the Columbia ice fields and the glaciers that are on the Rocky Mountains between the border of Alberta and BC.
So it manages and oversees things like, as I mentioned, power generation, water sharing, flood management and mitigation as well. So were you surprised to hear that the U.S. had paused talks to modernize the Columbia River Treaty?
Surprised, no. Disappointed, yes. I think many of us in the water world that are familiar with the Boundary Waters Treaty have seen the rhetoric heating up over the last few weeks and months, particularly starting on January 20th, when the new Trump administration came into power. Then there was a series of executive orders that were released that were a bit of a warning sign that some of the agreements, the treaty agreements, were on the target list or at least being reevaluated and reconsidered by the U.S. government.
One called People Over Fish.
Yes. So the People Over Fish agreement is largely talking about water for people first and the ecosystem, last in line. In the case of the Columbia River Treaty, there are some very sensitive fish populations, not only the salmon that reside in Canada on the Canada side and U.S. side, but also of a sensitive smelt population that is prevalent in the U.S., particularly near the mouth of the Columbia River, where it drains into the Pacific Ocean, And some of the arrangements that were being renegotiated over the last 7 years were to do with a higher ecological flow to make sure that the stream temperatures are maintained so that they're suitable as a habitat for some of the fish.
And we know that with salmon, for example, once that temperature goes up too high, the waters get too warm, that's a real threat.
Correct. And there's a lot of speculation about fish and ecosystem health, particularly in the face of climate change. And as the flows are changing at different times of the year in terms of what is needed to maintain a healthy ecosystem. The Putting People Over Fish order, executive order literally says that we put people and energy production and people's needs above any kind of minimum flow needs that would be in a stream. And between that and the Unleashing American Energy executive order, actually allows provisioning to violate NEPA, which is the Environmental Protection Act in the U.S.
So is this a matter of, again, kind of reading between the lines here with this rhetoric, these executive orders? Is there really a concern with just the pause of this these negotiations?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, as I said, if you follow the paper trail as well as the rhetoric trail, then I think, the signs are starting to align. So I would say that we would be right to be cautious right now, and to certainly keep our eyes on the prize and make sure that we're following what is happening conclusively. But at this point, negotiations are just paused. They have not been canceled. The agreement in principle that is in place is still in effect. And as of right now, it is technically business as usual, other than the negotiations aren't happening around ratifying that treaty in Congress.
Amid all of this, Canadians have been very sensitive and concerned about issues around sovereignty. What is at risk when it comes to that? What should we be concerned with regard to water?
Yeah, well, that's just it, right? I mean, the Columbia River Treaty suffers from the fact that it was already under negotiation and had only an agreement in principle that had been reached at the time that the new Trump administration took over. But this really speaks to Canadian sovereignty and water sovereignty in particular, which has been a long-standing back and forth conversation between Canada and the U.S. The Great Lakes have been no stranger to conflict and negotiation.
That's come up as well, yeah.
Exactly. But I think what we're seeing now is an unfortunate change in tone and spirit and intent that is changing the nature of that conversation and the seriousness of this conversation. And particularly in the last week, the comments around revising the treaty boundaries. And of course, what Donald Trump is talking about there are the boundaries that are laid out in the Boundary Waters Treaty of 1909 that actually determine where the U.S. ends and where Canada begins. And those were surveyed as a result of the Boundary Waters Treaty.
So what could BC do then?
At this point in time, it is a do nothing other than, if I was in government, I might be looking at all the different what ifs and the different kinds of scenarios to make sure that we're on the ready. And I would hope and have good faith that the federal government is doing the same around all the other 12 river basins in the Boundary Waters Treaty and around our national priorities to do with water and water sovereignty.
You heard Adrian Dix there dismiss the idea of just using electricity, using hydropower as a kind of pawn in this trade war, as Doug Ford has done, threatening a 25% surcharge. Okay, I'm just going to wrap. Thank you so much, Professor Stadnyk, for your expertise on this. Really appreciate it. We'll watch to see what happens with this treaty.
You're welcome.
That's Professor Tricia Stadnyk, who is a Canada Research Chair in Water Hydrology. It is now 12:14. We're going to go pretty soon to David Eby speaking about let's go live to David Eby talking about the tariffs.
I begin by thanking AG Sharma and her team for their work on today's announcement, as well as Ministry of Transportation and Ministry of Jobs, Economic Development and Innovation, Ministers Gibson and Farnworth, who are joining us here in pulling together this legislation that we introduced in the House. Their teams, our government, is working tirelessly to stand up for British Columbians in this uncertain time. Now, I know we're angry, And we're worried and we're anxious as British Columbians, as Canadians, about the unpredictable and chaotic actions of the president as he works to apparently try to collapse the US economy and bring Canada with it. And we can't stand by as we know that he is going to continue to bring out unpredictable executive orders, directions that include direct attacks, not just on Canada, but on now the European Union, on other countries around the world. For our part, our job is to protect BC jobs, protect BC families. And part of doing that work needs to be that we have the tools to be able to respond as quickly as the changes are coming from Trump. He has no regard for the chaos that he's causing, because we feel this is part of his strategy to hurt the Canadian economy and to force us into his vision of annexation to the United States of America, redrawing our borders and access to our water. Well, that's not going to happen. We're going to control our own destiny, and we will never be the 51st state. We're a proud and independent country. We're going to make our own decisions. We're not waiting. We're taking action on all fronts to respond to U.S. threats. Most recently, you will have seen that BC Hydro no longer offers rebates for equipment produced by Tesla, as well as Tesla electric vehicles. We are responding. We've taken all of the alcohol off the shelves in BC. We've issued directions around what to buy to Crown corporations, health authorities across government, and we will do more. We're diversifying our markets. We're leading the conversation on internal trade across Canada, as British Columbia always has. We're continuing that proud tradition of pushing nationally. And we're bringing people together to grow our economy here in BC and grow our Canadian economy, supporting national efforts as well. What is clear is that we are stronger together as a country responding to this threat. Living with the Americans is like the senior Trudeau said, it's like living beside an elephant, sleeping beside an elephant. It's a big, powerful country, and every twitch affects us. And right now, the beast is coming at us full speed. So we got to stick together. In that context, we've introduced legislation today in the House, a bill that we hope will pass with the full support of the legislature. It does a few things. It responds to the escalating nature of the threats that we've seen. Just this week, the U.S. pulled out of our discussions on the future of the Columbia River Treaty. This is a treaty that was signed in 1964 that talks about how British Columbia works with the U.S. to prevent floods, how we share the electrical generation capacity of the massive dams that were constructed, and how we manage the river. The modernization of this treaty to protect salmon, to ensure that we're maximizing the benefit of electricity, but also recreational values in the Kootenays, communities that were very affected when these dams were built. Those discussions were put on pause this week. And so as this happens, and as things continue to escalate with the United States, one thing is clear for British Columbia: we can never leave ourselves again to be in the position of being at the whim of one person in the White House. We have to move faster, and we have to be incredibly nimble to respond to the escalating situation. So the legislation that we introduced does those things. It gives us a new tool to respond to the threat of a 25% across-the-board tariff against Canadians and against British Columbians by allowing government to impose tolls on commercial vehicles bringing goods from Washington State through to Alaska. It allows us to ensure we're buying BC and Canadian products, and products, frankly, and services from anywhere else except from the United States for our core government purchases. This reflects about $600 million in annual purchasing, at least. And this gives us the legal authority to direct the Crown corporations and health authorities and all of government to prefer products not from the US and to buy Canadian products. And the third piece that this does is that it gives us the tools to respond in real time to executive orders that target Canada, that target British Columbia. I wish I could say we could predict what the president is going to do next, but I don't think anyone can predict that. I'm not even sure the president can predict what he's going to do next. And so we need to have the tools in place to be able to respond quickly. This is a significant piece of legislation in that it gives regulation-making authority to government that does not require it to go through the legislature immediately. And so given the unique nature of these powers, it's important that there are checks and balances in place, and I'm going to ask the Attorney General to walk you through what those are. One of the things that's really important for me is to underline how important it is and how much we understand the person-to-person relationships that we have across the border with our friends, the American people. I recognize, and we all recognize, that the American people are not the president. These are different things. And I've been receiving many, many letters in my office from Americans who are apologizing for the actions of the president, who are expressing their support for British Columbia and for Canada and their appreciation for our relationship. And they're standing with us. Just today, representatives from the European Union put up a video supporting Canadians. We're seeing that support show up in surprising and wonderful ways. For the Americans, as a gesture and as a reinforcement of what I truly believe, which is that this is one man, this is not Americans, reached out to Governor Ferguson in Washington and invited him to come up to British Columbia. The governor has agreed to come up to visit, to express his support for our relationship, and we're working on dates right now. We can work together despite the trade war that the president has brought to us. We didn't want it. We didn't sign up for it, but we're not going to back down. We're going to fight back, elbows up. And I say that recognizing that my default elbow setting is already pretty high. We're going to make a better future for ourselves. There's nowhere else I'd rather be in the world to face down this threat, and the world is facing the threat from the president, than right here in British Columbia. We've got everything we need to be successful here, and now we have some legislative tools to ensure that we realize that potential and we find a path forward where we stand on our own 2 feet. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Premier, and thank you all for joining us here today. The Economic Stabilization Tariff Response Act was tabled in the legislature early today, as the Premier mentioned. If passed, it will allow government to have increased tools and authority to respond to trade threats from the United States. There are some features of this bill that are important to emphasize. This is a broad piece of enabling legislation. It empowers government to respond quickly and take action in a wide range of areas. The legislation will allow us to respond in a timely fashion to new threats as they emerge. This legislation is temporary. The powers are time limited and will sunset no later than mid-2027. We can use this legislation to respond quickly to the emerging developments and carry out the work of longer term and permanent changes at the same time. The proposed legislation does not give government unchecked broad power. There are guardrails in place. The bill allows us to enable existing agencies and government bodies to carry out their mandates despite external attempts to harm our economy and our sovereignty. Government cannot use the authorities given by this bill to allow natural resource projects without permits or environmental assessments, and it cannot use the authorities to sidestep Indigenous consultation requirements. Those remain protected. We've been careful to frame the bill in such a way that allows us to respond over time to varying levels or potential countermeasures and when they happen. The tools in the legislation are about setting us up to respond quickly and will not have to be used unless the U.S. forces our hand to use them. The tools included in the bill allow government to reduce immediate pressures and create time to build longer-term and permanent solutions and build a strong, resilient economy, address barriers to interprovincial trade, direct public bodies to buy goods and services from jurisdictions that aren't threatening or imposing tariffs on us, impose tolls, fees on U.S. commercial vehicles using provincial public infrastructure like highways, take any other action necessary to defend BC's economy from the impact of trade threats. If there's one thing that we've learned over the past few weeks, it's that the current American administration is unpredictable. We as a government need to be ready to respond to protect British Columbians, our economy, the jobs that may be at stake, and alter our course quickly. Like you, our government is frustrated by the actions of President Trump. I want to assure you that the government has your back. We are taking action to protect the livelihoods and independence of British Columbians. We are proudly Canadian. Elbows up.
This is BC Today. You've been listening to Premier David Eby and Attorney General Nikki Sharma. They have introduced legislation today, they say, to respond to the escalating nature of the threats from the United States. Eby touched on the U.S. pausing negotiations on the Columbia River Treaty. The legislation gives a tool by allowing the government to impose tolls on commercial trucks traveling through BC to Alaska, as well as to direct Crown corporations to prefer products not from the U.S., and tools to respond in real time to executive orders that he said would target Canada and BC. We'll bring you more coverage of this from Premier David Eby and Attorney General Nikki Sharma in a moment here on BC Today. If you're joining us on CBC Television, we'll be pausing for a commercial break and a news update coming your way. If you'd like, you can turn to CBC Radio 1 or to our website, cbc.ca/BC, or on YouTube, CBC British Columbia, to continue coverage on the Premier's press conference. And as I say, we'll bring it back to you on CBC TV in a few minutes as well. You're with BC Today. To Ottawa now for a moment, and the transition from Justin Trudeau to Mark Carney. The newly elected Liberal leader will be sworn in as Prime Minister tomorrow. Carney will also unveil his cabinet, and a federal election is expected to come within the next week or so. Labour Minister Stephen McKinnon says the new cabinet will need to be focused on the trade war.
This is a group of people that need to be ready to face the threats that we are facing from the United States on the trade front. Of course, there are many other issues in Canada. I know in the department that I currently lead, we have several. For me, the first among them is to make sure that we put a safety net under workers.
That's current Labour Minister Stephen McKinnon. Tomorrow, a new cabinet will be sworn in, as well as Mark Carney as the new Prime Minister. So you can tune into CBC for special coverage of the swearing-in ceremony of Mark Carney and his cabinet. That will begin at 7 a.m. Pacific time on CBC. Just about 12:30 now. You're with CBC, and this is BC Today. I'm Michelle Elliott. Thanks for being with us. We'll continue our coverage of Premier David Eby and Attorney General Nikki Sharma and their press conference outlining new legislation that they've introduced in response to the tariff threats from U.S. President Donald Trump. He is now, Premier David Eby is now taking questions from reporters. We'll take that to you live right after the CBC News Update. And here now is the CBC News Update.
Good afternoon. BC Hydro says Tesla products are no longer eligible for money back under its electric vehicle rebate program. The program covers up to 50% of the purchase cost and installation of a home charger, offers rebates on energy storage batteries and inverters. The Crown utility says the move aims to encourage people to choose Canadian goods. Kamloops RCMP have released a picture of a man they say has been passing off fake money at local businesses. Police say at least 3 stores on the city's South Shore were targeted over the weekend. And Environment Canada is warning drivers traveling through the mountain passes to be careful as a low-pressure system moves across the interior. Snowfall warning has been issued for the Trans-Canada between Eagle Pass and Rogers Pass. About 15 centimeters of snow is forecast along the Coquihalla from Hope to Merritt and along the Okanagan Connector by this afternoon. A winter storm warning is in effect for Highway 3 from Paulson Summit to the Kootenay Pass. And now the BC forecast. On the north coast, chance of showers today, high of 6 degrees. In the Peace, periods of light snow, high of -9. In the central interior, a mix of sun and cloud, high of -3. Highs around 7 with periods of rain in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, chance of showers, high of 5. And for the south coast, increasing cloud, chance of showers, high of 9. And that is your CBC News from Vancouver.
That is Amelia John.
Thanks,
the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Thank you so much, Amelia.
Thank you.
I never know who's going to be in that square, the little screen that I'm looking at. This is CBC's BC Today. Thanks for being with us. Let's go live now back to Premier David Eby.
We're able to respond quickly to minimize the damage. We see this as emergency legislation. This is not everyday legislation. This is not routine legislation. This is in an emergency situation where we need legislative authority. We need government authority to do something quickly to minimize damage to the economy, to people, and an unpredictable action from an unpredictable president. And so that's the intent of the legislation. There are a number of safeguards built in there. And I might invite the Attorney General to walk through some of those safeguards.
Yeah, thank you, Premier. We were very careful to design the legislation to be sure and that this is for emergency steps that Cabinet will have to take due to the unpredictability, as the Premier mentioned, of what we're facing, but that there's space for the longer term work. I know my colleagues here and Minister Gibson are very tightly engaged with the business community and many other communities that are going to be impacted by this. So if there's something that we can do in the interim to mitigate harm and to step in on an emergency style, the longer work will continue for that, the permanent changes to legislation and policy with close ties to all the people affected. The bill sunsets, so every action taken on this will sunset in May 2027. The guardrails that are put in place make it specific that the power could be used if there is something from a foreign jurisdiction that impacts our economy. So it's not broad in the sense of anything. It has to be something that shows it's an emergency action based on the tariff and the trade war we're in right now. And finally speaking, we would have to bring any action used under the emergency powers would come to the legislature, and there's a reporting requirement for that. It's clear that we will have to act in an emergency basis, but that doesn't mean that there won't be longer term work to transform our economy and diversify our economy in the ways that we need to.
Rob Shaw for a follow-up.
I'm just anticipating the opposition parties calling this some type of power grab. I mean, I don't know. I'm just anticipating that bypassing the legislature after a razor-thin election is a power grab. I guess I'm just wondering if you can respond to what I'm assuming is going to be that type of criticism.
Yeah, I won't put myself in the mind of the opposition right now because I simply cannot understand how you can sit on a panel with a YouTuber that says, I'm going to encourage everybody to buy as much American as possible to undermine the boycott of American goods. Like what the Conservative Party is thinking right now defies explanation. How you can welcome as a patriot a YouTuber that says that cutting off Doug Ford's efforts to cut off electricity to the United States to get the attention of the president were an act of war and that the president should revisit harm on Canadians in response and we get everything we deserve. Like I can't explain that. I don't understand it. But I know that British Columbians need to know about our commitment to ensuring that there are safeguards in place for these authorities, that they are extraordinary authorities that would only and should only, and by the legislation can only be used in extraordinary circumstances, that even if they are used, they have to come to the legislature to be ratified, that even if they are used, they expire after a specific time. And so when there's an emergency like a natural disaster, we have these authorities. This is a human-caused disaster. We can see it coming, We don't know what it is, and we need to be able to respond quickly. If we didn't have this, people would say, why didn't you respond? Why didn't you do the things that we needed you to do? When the president did this, you knew he was erratic, you knew he was issuing these orders. We don't want to use these authorities. We will work through the legislature. We have significant bills coming through around speeding up projects, around ensuring that we're growing our economy, and we are working through the legislature. But we sadly do need these authorities to make sure that we're able to respond in emergency, and frankly, I can see it coming like a freight train.
Rob Buffum, CTV.
Well, hi, Premier. I wanted to get your thoughts on the opposition. The Conservatives introduced that bill about daylight saving time. They say we're talking about elbows up, but we're still following the Americans' lead. Would you be open to the idea of voting in support of that bill? And also, I wanted to get your thoughts on concerns that were raised that these fees or tolls on ferries and highways, is there any chance those could unintendedly be applied to British Columbians?
Thanks, Rob. We're in the middle of a trade war with the United States. The focus is on growing the economy, making sure that we're getting rid of trade barriers across the country. We're working with business leaders and labor leaders to identify things that are holding us back and quickly address them. I am, trust me, I am as sympathetic as the next guy to kids that have trouble adjusting to time changes or pets or just waking up feeling like you're an hour behind. But in this moment, that is not government's number one priority, although it is the opposition's priority right now. On the second question, no, this is a specific authority in relation to the trade war. It's intended to minimize impact on British Columbians while maximizing impact on Americans. And that's the intent of the bill, the provision, and the tolling authority.
Rob Buffum for a follow-up.
I have a follow-up for a colleague who's doing a story. I think you probably would have heard about the 35-year-old British Columbian woman who is being detained. She tried to enter the States with an incomplete visa, and I gather since March 3rd she's been detained in what her family is characterizing as inhumane circumstances. I wanted to get your reaction. They're very upset, and it's been, 10 days now? They're not really in contact with her, and she's not being well treated. Yeah,
this is a terrible story. My heart goes out to this family and this woman that's stuck in some kind of immigration detention facility in the United States. The federal government should be doing all they can through diplomatic channels to get her returned to Canada as quickly as possible. Obviously, I don't know all the details here, but it certainly reinforces anxiety that many British Columbians have and many Canadians have about our relationship with the United States right now and the unpredictability of this administration and its actions. I am profoundly concerned about these kinds of actions that really, they violate the very idea that Canadians are safe in the United States. When we visit, and I know it's not what Americans want. I know I don't even know if this case, if there are some things that could explain what's happening here, but the nature of our relationship is so fraught right now that this case makes us all wonder, what about our relatives who are working in the States? What about when we cross the border? What kind of an experience are we going to have? The harm that this does to the U.S. economy through impact to tourism, impact to business relationships, impact to people who are seeking visas to work in the United States who have special skills that they can't get anywhere else. It is reckless, the approach of the president, and this woman should be brought back to Canada as quickly as possible.
Next, we have a question.
You've been listening to Premier David Eby, and in that response, he was speaking to a case of a Canadian traveler in the United States. But his press conference has been on the response from BC to the tariff threats from U.S. President Donald Trump. And he and Attorney General Nikki Sharma discussing new legislation and responding to questions from reporters. And to questions there around the sweeping what he called the sweeping nature of this bill and the actions that are allowed under it, including changing or charging fees to trucks traveling through BC to Alaska, as well as being able to enact legislation or bills in response to executive orders in real time. The Attorney General said the bill sunsets in May 2027, and she called those guardrails on the legislation, and that any action would need to show that it is a reaction to the trade war. And she said this is on an emergency basis, but called for long-term work around diversification. Eby did call the actions extraordinary, but again said it would have to go to the legislature and would expire at a specific time. More coverage coming your way throughout the day here on CBC. Earlier in our show, we talked to an expert about the U.S. pausing negotiations on the Columbia River Treaty this week, and you heard Premier David Eby touch on that as well in his press conference. We got these emails to our inbox. Scott writes from Burnaby, the Columbia River Treaty is one of the most advantageous agreements Canada has ever signed. As the headwaters of the Columbia, British Columbia controls the flow of water, a critical resource for the United States. Our province receives half the power gains from U.S. dams due to our controlled water releases, imported free at any time under the treaty. Canada holds the real power, literally and figuratively. The only reason the U.S. benefits is because we allow it. We should not give up anything in negotiations when all the benefits already flow to BC. To use Donald Trump's words, the U.S. doesn't hold any of the cards in this negotiation. We do. Marianne writes from Terrace, I would like to suggest the U.S. stop filling their swimming pools and use one community pool in their neighborhoods instead. They could stop growing lawns in the desert. And most important, the U.S. could get those desalination plants set up quickly to fulfill their needs. We need our water. Less snowfall, less glacial water available, rivers lacking cool water for salmon, less rainfall, etc. makes protection of our future just as important as the U.S. future. And Joanne writes, I'm an Indigenous person and saying this is not lost on me or any First Nation that our provincial and federal governments are feeling the pain, disrespect, and abuse of power when they ignore treaties. First Nations were forced into court cases against the provincial and federal governments when they ignored treaties with First Nations dating back to the 1800s and 1900s. Thank you so much for your emails. bctoday@cbc.ca. $12:40 now here on BC Today, 12:43. Thanks so much for being with us. Well, we are ramping up to the Junos, and let's hear it, BC. The Juno Tour is making stops in Surrey and Kelowna this very weekend. It's a concert series celebrating the upcoming Junio Awards, taking place, of course, at Rogers Arena in Vancouver on March 30th. We have a pair of tickets to give away for the big show. Now, the Junos Plaza Party in Surrey takes place all day on Saturday at Surrey's Civic Plaza, and it features Juno nominees from across the Lower Mainland. And we want to hear from you. Who's your favorite Canadian musician right now? You can give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, and you can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. And we are in for a musical treat right now. Joining me here in studio is decorated sitarist and composer Mohammed Asani. He will be performing on the library stage at the Junos Plaza Party this Saturday at 4 p.m. Mohammed, thank you so much for being with us.
My absolute pleasure.
I am thrilled to have you. And if you're watching us on television or online, I mean, what a stunning image right now. You are holding your sitar. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, the sitar is, a lot of people think it's an ancient instrument. Yeah, there are influences from the past, but this particular instrument is actually a hybrid instrument. And it developed since the 1800s, and the instruments that came before has influences. So basically, there was a family of travelers from Uzbekistan, and they migrated to India. And they were literate in poetry and music from Persia, Iranian music, and Arabian music. And then after like one generation, a Sufi saint called Hazrat Amir Khusro invented the sitar. The sitar actually means 3 strings, and it's an Iranian instrument. But in India, since the 13th century, it was like only had 3 strings, and now it has like more than 18 strings.
I would say that's not 3 strings I see on there.
So that's the evolution. So like every instrument tells a story.
Wow.
So when you look at any instrument, say for example, the church organ, the technology of church organ was imported from China to Europe about more than 1,000 years ago from an instrument called sheng. So we are all very interconnected.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's lovely to see that represented in that one instrument. How did you come to learn to play?
I grew up in Pakistan, in Karachi, and as an 8 or 9-year-old boy, we used to have a lot of fairs. And in a stadium, in a cricket stadium, in the middle of the pitch, I would see a band playing. So as a kid, my heart, I would just melt, absolutely melt. And then when I was about 18 years old, I traveled to England to study piano and Western classical music.
Yeah.
And then I carried on learning. I'm a multi-instrumentalist, so I also played tabla and sitar.
And tabla as well.
Yeah.
Oh, I love the tabla.
Tabla as well.
What was it that made your heart melt as a kid?
I think these things, as a child, you don't have all the words or the vocabulary. You just feel, right? So I felt that feeling that, oh, music, I wish I can be a musician, that was my dream.
Oh, my goodness. Now, you're actually going to play for us.
Yes.
Which I'm just thrilled and excited about. So can you tell us perhaps, why don't you play your first piece while we wait for calls to come in, and tell us a bit about it?
Okay, I will play you the first piece.
This is Mohammad Asani, who, as you heard, is a multi-instrumentalist, a decorated sitarist, composer, and instructor. He's getting ready to perform, and he is performing Saturday on the library stage at 4 p.m. That is Mohammed Asani. Oh my goodness. I'm just going to clap because I know people are clapping as they're listening.
Thank you so much.
That was so beautiful.
Thank you.
Oh my God. I'm one of those people who can't help but sway when I hear good music and hear the groove, and I really couldn't help but move to that. That was haunting as well. Can you tell us a bit about that piece?
Yeah, this is my own composition.
Wow.
It's from an album called The Wayfinder. And the concept of the album is that because I've lived in 3 different continents, I've studied Western classical music, jazz, South Asian, sitar, tabla. So it's like an amalgamation of my life. It's like full circle. So I draw on all these influences. And Wayfinder is like a traveler who's collecting gems and, you know.
And bringing it all together.
Bringing it all together.
Oh my goodness, Wayfinder. I mean, it's a hybrid, just like the instrument is.
Yes.
And you actually teach sitar to students at the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra.
Correct. I teach sitar.
Oh my God. Do you teach that piece?
Sorry, would I teach this piece?
Yes.
Yeah, if somebody wants to learn it, I would teach them happily, yeah.
Amazing.
Some of my students would come to me and say that, well, I listened to this on your album. Can you teach me this piece?
Oh, wow.
So I will definitely teach them a little bit according to their ability.
My guest, what a pleasure to have Mohammed Asani with me, a multi-instrumentalist, sitarist, a composer, and instructor. And he's performing live on the library stage on Saturday at 4 p.m. at the Junos Plaza Party, and that's at the Surrey Civic Plaza. We're asking people, who is your favorite Canadian music artist right now? Ahead of the Junos, we do have a pair of tickets to give away to one lucky caller. Mohammed, I'm going to ask you as well in a moment who your favorite is, so you can start thinking about that now. Lots of callers on the line. Kelly, he's like, who do I choose? Kelly's on the line from Richmond. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, how are you?
I am well. And who's your favorite?
Has to be Karan Aujla. He's absolutely fantastic. He's such an inspiration. His music and just his journey, what he's come through.
Yeah. He's a
love
rapper and singer.
Yeah, and he's Tell Me with one, the most recent collaboration is just so catchy. I hope he sings that on stage.
And so, have you seen Karan Aujla perform?
No, I have not had that honor. But I would love to see him perform.
It's so interesting seeing Punjabi music artists in BC really just popping and hitting the big stage, eh?
Yeah, and he's, just from what I understand, I've been in Canada just over 20 years, he's actually, just his journey has connected with a lot of youth and a lot of our generation that, has migrated here or are going through things and struggles and tragedies just like he has, and how he's dealt with it by, sharing his experiences and just the outlet that he used to deal with everything that he's going through. And then what that has turned into is just so inspiring.
Great call. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Thank you.
That's Kelly calling about Karan Aujla, the rapper and singer based in BC. Asking you for your favorite musical artists in Canada. Stephen is on the line in Vancouver. Hi, Stephen.
Hello.
Hi.
I've been listening to Alessia Carr recently.
Love her.
A.T. Yervinin of Bahamas. As far as Juno's concerned, I saw Snotty Nosed Reds Kids play outdoors downtown Vancouver a couple of years ago, and boy, did they put on a heck of a live show.
They sure do.
The crowd was really into it. That was really something.
Yeah, they would be up there, I think. And if you're watching the Junos, you can't miss Snotty Nosed Reds Kids for sure. And you mentioned Bahamas and Alessia Cara as well. What do you love about them?
The content of their, the message behind their songs and behind them. I've listening to them speak about their songs. I've seen A.T. a few times at the Vancouver Folk Music Festival, and he talks a lot about, his experience and what's gone into his songs lyrically and songwriting and such. And it's pretty inspiring.
Yeah, they do have messages in their music. And Alessia Cara, I mean, she's been performing since she was young, has a new album out as well. I do love her. I think she's one of those who has real depth, an artist with real depth. Stephen, thank you very much. One of my favorites there as well. Walter in Penticton, who's your favorite Canadian music artist?
I'm an old boomer, so my favorite would still be Neil Young over all these years.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, if
you
go ahead.
To play a song, it would Comes a Time, and take me back into the 70s. Whole class on BCIT, we would sing that to each other on a Monday morning with our hangover.
Oh. I'm
some fond memories of those, and maybe some other people I'll shout out to who still might remember that.
Well, I was going to say, I'm sure you're not alone in having those memories. I mean, thank you for that. Going classic. Neil Young, favorite Canadian artist. Thank you so much, Walter in Penticton. One of you will get a pair of tickets to the Junio Awards. So we're going to choose in a couple of minutes at the end of this show. I'm going to go back here and wrap up with Mohammed Hassani, who's just performed for us as well. We'll be performing at the Junos Plaza Party on Saturday at 4 p.m. Okay, so we heard Alessia Cara, Bahamas, Neil Young, and Karan Aujla. Your favorite Canadian music artist right now?
I have a few colleagues who are in line as nominated artists. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to upset one and Sorry about that.
No choosing favorites.
But I do think that lovely to see the diversity, and that's the strength of the Canadian music industry.
Yeah,
that's really.
You know, I often say, Mohammed, I listened to Sarah McLachlan. She was my introduction to Canadian music when I first came to Canada. Who was yours?
Oh God, a lot of people. Actually, just in Vancouver, so many of my colleagues are just so incredible. Favorite, I would be hard to say one. There's always like an eternal thing. I like world music from different parts of the world. So I never have one category or one style.
A true hybrid. You are. Back to your first message. Listen, it's been such a pleasure to have you. I feel so privileged to be able to watch you perform. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
All the best on Saturday.
Thank you so much.
Mohammed Hassani, decorated sitarist, composer. You can catch him this Saturday at the Surrey Civic Plaza. Congratulations to Kelly in Richmond. You get a pair of tickets to the Junio Awards. Have fun.